Thanks again for inviting me. I'm from DPI Tatura. I'm a research scientist in horticulture and water management. I'm not a spatial science person. However, I do have a colleague in the audience, Andy McAllister, who is from the spatial science research group at Tatura. Today, I'm going to give a quick overview of some work that we're doing in DPI and how it might relate to mobile-ready horticulture. Obviously, there's a heap of drivers out there at the moment that require change in our management and our horticulture practices. We all know climate change is a big issue and it's going to be a concern and adaptation and other strategies are going to be needed. Recently we've had a dry run of years, a drought, and water management was and water shortages and scarcity was also high on the agenda. We know energy and food and the world population growth and predictions. All these things are all suggesting that we need to be more efficient in our resource use and management for horticulture. And it basically suggests that there's going to be increased competition between land and water resources, and we all know that there are some negative effects of agriculture and resource depletion and degradation can happen. So the aim and the challenge, I suppose, is to improve productivity, maintain industry competitiveness by using best practice technologies, and in particular what area we're concerned with is water use and production. And obviously the need to develop management strategies to optimise water productivity, water use efficiency, the amount of product per unit water. And to do that, we need to develop methods and systems and approaches and things to manage and reduce variability, both at the farm level and within the paddock. When we look at the state of play, from the example here from the apple and pear industry suggests in their recent investment plan that we are lagging behind our competitors, our international competitors, and exports are in a good phase at the moment. They are down. It's very few data are out there in terms of benchmarking water productivity, water use efficiency. Here's a snapshot of some data for the Golden Valley on apple, pear and peach crops, collected about 5 to 10 years ago on, as you can see, very few farms, up to 11 apple crops and maybe 20 or 30 pear and peach crops. And there's a whole range of spread there in water productivity, water use efficiency. And there could be a range of reasons for that too. But basically, there's no systematic ongoing monitoring of that anymore, and there could be a range of reasons why there is a variability there. And here's a list. Every farm and every orchard is different in terms of the type of crops they grow, the varieties and their maturity date, the crop age, etc., their area, the amount of tree cover that there is between systems and trellis designs and row directions. There's a whole range, and that impacts on our yield and water inputs and our potential production. And obviously there's a whole raft of other agronomic inputs. So the take-home message there is that farms are dynamic in both time and space, and to do our water productivity analysis and comparisons, we need metrics and we need to customise both the yield and the water use part of the equation. So we need customised field-specific, crop-specific yield and water use targets. So the work we've been working on is in DPI FSR is basically working on functional relationships, the science behind the yield and water use targets. It's involved remote sensing and ground-based measurements, and we're bringing together crops, regions, the amount of vegetation cover, how big the crop is, the trees are, obviously the local climate, the weather data, and bringing in also the growing season and the varieties. and how long the fruit's on the tree, etc. And I won't go to any detail, but basically the approach, as I said, is combining GIS spatial information, satellite information and ground-based measurements. The GIS data is very important to link the satellite work in terms of what crops where, what's irrigated, what's not, and the water deliveries, etc., etc. The satellite data can provide us with two things that we're particularly interested in. Is actual measurements of evapotranspiration, water use, ET, and vegetation cover, which NDVI type products are a common place and a common benchmark for vegetation cover. And obviously the groundwork, obviously you need to link what you see from above with biophysical measurements of canopies and yield and water on the ground. And then there's obviously local weather information. As an example, here's a spatial map of land use by crop type for the Shep East horticulture region in central Victoria, in Shepparton. So we've got a range of crops here: apple, apricot, stone fruit, peaches, nectarine and pears. So probably the greens are probably a bit merged there, sorry about that. But basically for each field of orchard block, we know orchard age, we know crop type and where it is basically in the landscape. So that's a very important data layer when we come to satellite remote sensing. So here we have a image, a false colour image. Red is irrigated basically in midsummer near Shepparton, and we have centre pivots, we've got horticulture, we've got dairy pastures and the Goulburn River, Mooroopna and Shepparton. And using satellite data, we then, as I mentioned earlier, be able to calculate water use and irrigation activity across the landscape. And here's a map, what I've called KC. So basically it's ET, water use of the crop, divided by the local reference evaporative demand derived from a weather station on ground. So we can then categorise parts of the landscape that are high evaporation rates of the land versus low. So we need to be able to then draw all that information and using that land use data, pull in and develop relationships to then derive these yield and water use targets. So here's every apple orchard in the Goulburn Valley. So there's about 6,000 fields there. Each data point is a field. And this is a midsummer scene analysis of two things. Vegetation cover, which as I mentioned earlier, bare ground's about 0.15 and full canopy is about 0.75. So we've got a fourfold range in apple orchard tree size. And we've got a similar thing here. This is water use divided by the local reference. We have a huge range in mid-season full canopy cover development water use. So basically we've got a linear relationship. As the canopies are larger, they evaporate more. So from those relationships we can then derive water use targets and what crop water requirement is, what irrigation requirement is for each individual field. And that's what this map here suggests. So using those land use data, we can make crop and region-specific measurements and relationships and then derive for a growing season the amount of water in megalitres per hectare, the irrigation requirement for a given season for each individual field. So that's a customised water use target for that apple crop, for that pear crop, etc. Similarly, we've got a yield target prediction based on relationships of vegetation cover and observed yields. And some of my work in my PhD, we've basically come up with the same targets, but for yield this time, for the same fields. So for each pear, apple, nectarine crop, we predict potential yield, what the actual yield is versus the potential yield. So this is a map of potential yield, given its canopy size and the local climate for a particular season. So that gives a summary of the spatial nature and the variability. So how do we pull all this together? We know that farms are variable in their crop types. We know where they are in the landscape. We do know what weather potentially is or could be forecast to be. And we've developed some functional relationships for yield and water use. So how can we put this together? So the work that's about to happen is pulling these things together. Because I've just mentioned we've got region-specific information on water and yield. We need some portal to deliver this dynamic information. And the reason I call it dynamic is because, yes, it is year to year, crops change, weather changes, and the Bureau of Met also now offers forecast information in evaporative demand and other important agronomic forecasts. So I'm suggesting we need some sort of dynamic portal, web delivery of this spatial information. As an example, here's a commercial product. It's available in the Netherlands, called Fieldbook. And it's very similar to what I've just described, the work we've done here in Australia. The user can select it, zoom in on Google through a Google Map type approach, zoom in and target their field. They can even target someone else's field, really. And as long as they pay, they get a product. They get yield information, water, irrigation scheduling information, and fertiliser type recommendations. As an example of where the work we're thinking we'd like to proceed with in our discussions with the Bureau of Meteorology, we want to link into this new product called Forecast Explorer. It's basically a 5K grid across Victoria at the moment, and I think New South Wales has joined. So for every 5 kilometres, there's a pixel here on this map, and you can basically zoom in and pick your location and get a forecast for the next 7 days. Daily forecast of temperature, amount of rain and its probability, and what's coming is this evaporative demand, especially for irrigation scheduling. If we can link in the water use target with the forecast, we can make big inroads on what irrigation requirement might be for the next week. So this is from the Bureau of Meteorology. So there's obviously historical data that you could also tap into, and then the 7-day daily forecast. And this is updated every day, and it uses a range of climate models, not just one model, plus the forecast expert to then derive these data. I think that's about my talk. Thank you.